Bookies. Thank you for joining Book Bust Downs by Bree. So this week, we're going to be busting down the most controversial book, Verity by Colleen Hoover. Now, personally, I like the book. A lot of people don't like the book, but I like a little love. I like a little suspense that I'm learning. This is my first suspense book, and I liked it, but I don't like thriller and horror, so it's none of that, okay? It's just a little love and a little suspense, okay? And I'm not going to be reading none of the book, just so you know, because it's illegal to do so. I might read a couple of lines on there, just to give you a little perspective, but I won't be reading any of the passages. Okay? Okay. So, when the book starts, we're kind of introduced to Lowen, who's going to be our main female character, and Jeremy, who's going to be our little main male character. Okay? So, first line of the book usually pull people in, and it goes, I hear the crack of his skull before the splattering of blood reaches me. Now, to anybody, this might be a little consequential, unless you live in Manhattan, which is where Lowen lives now. And she actually moved to Manhattan because she wanted to be invisible. She wanted to, be in the background. However, this kind of takes her by surprise. Like, oh, okay, this is a little bit more than I can bear. And going into shock, that's when she meets Jeremy. Jeremy is also on his way to a meeting, which Lauren is on her way to the meeting too, because she's an upcoming author and her agent wants to mix with her. And coincidentally, they're going to be going to the same meeting. But he's seen her with the blood splattered all over her, about to go into this full panic attack. So he pulls her into the coffee shop. And they get to sharing the story, this bus tragedy. And then Jeremy lets her know that he pulled his daughter out of the lake months ago, and then she tells him how she lost her mom to cancer a few weeks ago. Okay, so they got this little tragedy triangle going on, right? Okay, so they get to the office, and this is where we learn about Verity. Verity is an award-winning author who happens to be Jeremy's wife, who is now incapacitated. And so what they want is for Lowen to co-write the completion of the series. The series is about 6 books. She has 3 done. And so they want Lowen to finish the other 3. Now, she's a little intimidated because she like, it's little old me. And this is Verity we talking about. Like this, she's this public figure and people know her voice. And how am I do that? But she can't really say no because she in debt from her mother's death. She got an eviction notice. And the apartment she filed for is on standby for 2 weeks. So she can't really say no because in return, Jeremy is offering her $500,000 to finish it. And she can get an NDA. And she can write with a pen name. And she don't have to do any press. So yeah, baby, you ain't got no choice. So she gonna have to do what she got to do. And he offers for her to come and stay at the Crawford residence, Jeremy and Verity Crawford. So he offers for her to come and stay at the residence so she can gain insight into who Verity is and kind of, adopt her writing style to finish the series, right? Right. Okay. So Verity gets to the house and she's greeted by Crew. Crew is their son. He's like 5 or 6 years old. I forget how old he is. He's a little boy. And then she's introduced to Verity, which is where she learned that Verity is pretty much a vegetable. She don't talk. She don't walk. She's in a wheelchair. She can't eat on her own. All she can do is breathe and stare into space. Okay? That's Verity. So upon going through her things, trying to learn out who she is, trying to get into her head, she finds her autobiography. Okay. So going through her things, she finds her autobiography. So be it. Chapter 1. There's an author's note that reads, "What's read will be disgusting and will hurt." So it goes on to tell how Verity and Verity met. She was wearing this red little dress, this red little come F me dress, and how she spent 3 days with him. That turned into weeks, that turned into months, and she developed this intense need to please him. She wanted to be the reason he smiled. She wanted to be the reason he lived. Until she learned there was something that he loved more. And that's where Lowen was like, okay, this might be interesting. That was chapter 1. But let me go take a break. So she went, took a break. She goes into the kitchen, and then she runs into Jeremy. And that's when she learned that Verity was in a car accident. And she also learned that their drowned daughter, Harper, was actually a twin, and that both of them are actually dead. Interesting, right? And the car accident that Verity had was actually shortly after Harper drowned. And he asks her about her mom, but she don't want to talk about that right now. So she was like, I'm going to return to work. So looking for an excuse so she don't have to talk about her mama. So then we get into the autobiography, So Be It, chapter 2. So their relationship was all good at first. They didn't have no drama. They was all good and gold. And she was so addicted to him. And she became codependent. So they moved in together. And they just had this amazing sex. Like, sex goes so good, it had her biting down on the headboard. So whenever Verity moved into what used to be their rooms, she seen all the little bite marks on the headboard. Like, dang, okay, but that ain't none of my business. But this is in her autobiography. So she was saying how she left, bite marks on the headboard, and whenever he got transferred to his other job, how when she had to spend her nights alone, how she would straddle her pillow and still bite the headboard, pretending that he was there. It's a little intense, but hey, to each their own. So her lonely nights was actually how she became a writer. And so when she finished her first novel, how she celebrated was giving him a blowjob, and she swallowed for the first time. Yeah. And then they discussed how when he read her manuscript, how, her first book that they were celebrating, how he had fell so much deeper in love for her, and he proposed and asked her would she marry him. And then the night they got engaged was actually the night she ended up conceiving her babies. And so at this point, it's another author's note that warns the darkness that was ahead in this autobiography. But Lauren just like, okay, well, I gotta know a little bit, so I'm gonna keep on reading, but I'm gonna just stop for now. So she goes to sleep. She wakes up the next morning, goes in the office, and as she's just moving things around the office, the nurse and Verity comes on the porch. And so they just out there chilling. The nurse walks off. Lauren going around the office, she looks up, and Verity staring at her in her face. And so this kind of like, whoa, okay, what's going on here? So Lauren like, all right, it's a little weird. Got a little adrenaline pumping. Then she gets a phone call. Then the phone call scares her. So now she all jumpy. And then she gets a denial from the apartment complex because her eviction showed up on her little application. So now she like, well, dang, what I'm going to do? But Jeremy was around the corner, and he was like, look, you don't have all the information you need for the completion of the series anyway. So you might as well just stay. Whole time he's starting to like her a little bit, and at this point she like, oh well, like, okay, he's a nice guy, like he ain't bad looking, the office overlooks the deck. I can see him working out there, working the muscles and all that. So they have a little growing attraction to each other, right? So as she's watching him, Crew goes out there, and Crew turns around and waves up at her. So she looks up and realizes that he's actually not waving at her. He's waving at the room above the office, which is Verity's room. So she's like, hold up. So when she look up, she see the curtains move. So she like, wait a minute. The nurse just said, she left Verity in bed and that she turned the TV on for her for when Jeremy comes to, settle her down for the night. So, let me just creep up here and see what's going on. So when she gets up there, she sees that it's an oscillating fan in the room. So she's like, okay, well, that's why the curtain was moving. But when she walking out, that TV is turned off. Mind you, she just said the nurse told her she turned the TV on for Verity for when Jeremy comes in. So she was like, all right, well, it's a little janky, but she could have just pressed it twice. Let me not think too much into it. So she just left it as is. So she goes back downstairs and started reading the autobiography. So we get into So Be It, the next chapter. Verity is disgusted by her body and pregnancy. She don't like her little bump. She don't like her titties licking. She just hates her body. And while she's pregnant, she don't like the changes. However, as she gets bigger and she's showing, Jeremy is excited, of course. Like, these his first kids. So he's loving on her body. So, of course, as he gets, more excited and he's showing her more affection, she like, oh, okay, I might like being pregnant. Like, it's okay. It's not so bad. However, whenever they went to the appointment and found out that she was having twin girls, he had a moment and he teared up and kind of, cried a little bit. So she was like, I know he's not crying about these little girls. Like, I'm losing my man. So Verity takes a wire hanger and tries to abort her babies. So Lauren is disturbed, as we all are right now. Lauren is disturbed. She like, look, I need a drink, cause this is crazy. Verity did warn her in the autobiography, but she wasn't going to keep on reading. So she was like, girl, I need a drink. So she like, Jeremy, yeah, I need a drink. So he finds her a drink, and so she asking questions now, like, how your kids doing? How were y'all as a family? What actually happened to your girls? I know Harper drowned, and he was like, well, Chasten died of a peanut allergy. She went to a sleepover, had some peanuts, had a reaction, and didn't wake up. So she was like, oh, I'm so sorry. So he grabs her hand and sees a scar that she has there and asks her about the scar. But she kind of retreats back. She ain't really ready to talk about it just yet. So she kind of goes to her room. But as she's going to her room, she notices that he put on a lock on the door. And because when she moved in, she had asked, like, hey, is there, a lock I could put on the door? Whole time he thinking like, oh, okay, you don't want nobody coming in your room. But what he don't know is she trying to keep herself locked in that room. But he don't know why yet. But she ain't really talk about that yet. So she just go in there, and pop her little Zanny. And she just chilling out. She about to relax. She about to go to bed. Because, honey, reading about little Verity over here trying to kill her babies just to put her in a little different little mindset. Okay? So she chilling. All of a sudden, Cruz starts screaming out, going crazy. So she run upstairs because he in Verity room, and she run in the room. It's a knife on the floor. So he bleeding on the chin. She picks him up. She takes him in the bathroom, and she's like, what happened? Like, you okay? And so he was like, oh, mommy said not to touch the knife. So she like, mommy said. So then Jeremy walks in. She was like, well, there's a knife on the floor when I came in. He, I guess he kind of got in. So he was like, well, can you go check? So she go to check for the knife. The knife gone. So she's like, yo, I know, you know what? It's something going on. Okay? At this point, let me really dig into who Verity is, because something ain't right up in this household and I got to get to the bottom of it.